Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I am David Bowles, and this week I get to do the thing I almost never get to do. I get to celebrate. A book of mine is out in the world, and I want to tell you about it the way I would tell you across a table, because the book itself began across a table in an office in Nebraska with a man named Marshall Jameson snorting cigarette smoke out his nose. The book is called The Stopwatch Moralist, Rod Serling and the Drama Built to Outlive Its Air Date. It is about the Twilight Zone, and it is about the man who built it, and it is about why that show still plays tonight while the programs that own the adjective serious sit in vaults you need an appointment to enter. But mostly for me, it is about answering a charge that was delivered to me in 1982 when I was 16, and that I have been carrying ever since. Here's the shape of it. In 1955, American television had no memory. A play aired live once, and it was gone. No rerun, no archive, no second pressing. Serling wrote a play called Patterns, and the country went so crazy for it that the critic at the New York Times closed his column with 10 words that had no mechanism under them. A repeat performance at an early date should be mandatory. There was no mandatory in 1955, so the network bought the play a second time and performed the identical play live again, because the only instrument the medium owned for showing a thing twice was human beings. That was the economy Serling worked in, and when he tried to tell the Emmett Till story in that economy, twice in 1956 and 1958, the sponsors and the agencies and the network censors sanded his plays into other states, other decades, other people. 30 readers, twice daily meetings, and the writer outnumbered 30-1 taking notes. His response was engineering, and it is the engine of my book. He built a form with 3 working parts. The impossible premise, stipulated inside the opening minutes in the open, signed for at the top. Grant me 1 ghost, 1 gremlin, 1 talking doll, and everything that follows will be human. The ending, computed from the character's own choices under that single pressure, never lowered from a crane in the last minute. And the author's own face in the frame, reading the stipulation himself, a signature no sponsor could strip. The Greeks had a crane that lowered the god onto the roof to cut the knot the plot could not untie. Serling ran the crane in reverse. The god arrives early. I know that is a claim, and a claim in a mood cannot be audited. So the book carries an instrument, a tally of every episode. Serling wrote for the run, 92 of them, ruled 1 at a time, with the air date and 1 line of justification attached. 63 endings, computed from character, 20 gimmicks, 5 nullifications, 4 lotteries. The cheats are named and dated, and the most beloved episode in the run is in the cheat column, and the book loves it anyway, and it tells you why both of those things are true. Now, the part I have never told you in full. In 1982, 16 years old, I carried my brand new copy of The Twilight Zone Companion into Marshall Jameson's office at the public television station in Nebraska. Marshall was a golden boy of the golden age. Josh Logan's stage manager on Broadway, a producer of live drama at the summit of the form, an Emmy winner, an Aristotelian raised to believe the ending must be earned in the sight of the house. I was proud of my review of the book. He looked it over, snorted the smoke out his nose, allowed that he knew a lot of the people in it, and then delivered the verdict he had plainly been carrying for years. Everything in that show ends in deus ex machina, and nothing is earned. I argued, and my argument was thin because I was young and the charge had 2.5 millennia behind it. Then he asked to borrow my book. I never said no to Marshall. For months it sat on his desk, and when I asked whether he was finished, he always said, "Soon, son." Not yet. And then one day it was gone, never seen or spoken of again. The man who dismissed the machine kept its cannon on his desk for a season and never gave it back. That is the closest thing to a recantation the record holds. And this book is the answer I owed him. The God arrived early, the endings were earned. And the count is printed where anyone can audit it. It is also a correction of my own error. In 2010, I coined the phrase, the Twilight Zone effect, for the cheap twist that pays for nothing. And I hung it on the founder's name. The warrant had the wrong name on it. It belongs to the school, the imitators who photocopied the last minute, and skipped the 24 that bought it. The founder's name is cleared on the record at full length. The book does not flinch from the tragedy, because the tragedy is the proof. Serling built the one property in the medium's history that could not stop earning, and he sold it cheaply at the exact hour its earning began, because everyone at the table told him the show was dead. He died at 50 in June of 1975, and a year and a half later, Roots ran across 8 nights to the whole country, and the forms built for his talent pulled into the station as his train was leaving. The book prices that year and a half, and the violins are refused, because the record, read plainly, outplays the ornament. But tonight is not the sad part. Tonight is the release. The Stopwatch Moralist is out now as a Kindle e-book, with a cover I am genuinely proud of. The Twilight Zone's floating door, ajar at the center of the spiral vortex, the 5th dimension showing through the crack built from scratch. Nothing borrowed, nothing that is not ours. The paperback follows, cream paper, a wraparound cover with the vortex crossing the spine, and an index with real page numbers, because an index that points nowhere is not an index. And the audiobook is in production, with a full narrator's guide behind it. Pronunciation for every name from Serling to Tagatai Ridge, and the background a first reader might miss. Because a book read aloud should be read by someone who knows what the words are carrying. I wrote the book for Marshall, and the dedication says so. For Marshall and for Jana, and for the child at the one-channel set who came for monsters and stayed for the trials. The charge is answered. The count is printed. The door still opens, 67 years later on some screen tonight, for some child who came for monsters. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm David Bowles, wishing you a watchful evening and a more moral tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Be a human meme.